just a heads up before we get into the install of this, I finished up that fuel system saver and I am absolutely ecstatic with it. Super cool product. It's actually very easy to install if you follow along on the instructions, which I started to do in the beginning and I didn't do in the second half, and I'm an idiot. Anyway, so I want to just get into two things real quick that I made mistakes on that you may or may not see inside the video, but I want to make it exceptionally clear. First of all, you're going to see me use a small extension on a socket, and it's going to look like, oh wow, if you drop that in the frame rail, it might fall in there and it's gone forever. So that happened to me, and so don't do that. So when you're seeing what I'm using, don't use what I'm using, use a little bit longer. And then the other thing is the kit actually comes with nuts for the housing to bolt onto the frame. I didn't even read that part of it. So in the video, I can't remember if I say or not to reuse the factory nuts. Don't reuse the factory nuts from your factory housing. Use everything supplied with the kit. The instructions are super well laid out and everything. They give you all the information. I started to read them, and then the second half I just went off on my own. And anyway, let's get into it. All right, the fuel filter assembly is directly below me. It's right here, right there. So what I'm gonna do is I have some puppy pads, some absorbent pads. I'm gonna set those down. I'm gonna put a bucket down, or drain pan, whatever you wanna call it. That way I can start to drain the fuel down, and then we'll get to it. So here we go. All right, here we are with our drain pan. We got our pads down. This is just to contain the splash a little bit. So here's our fuel filter housing. Here's our fuel filter housing here. This is the 36 millimeter, and we're gonna unscrew that, and it's gonna go into the drain pan. I can hear a little bit of bubbling going on there. It's about to go. At this point, you can release this T30 and it'll slowly drain it down there, but we're going to just go for it and make more of a mess. And there we go. Fuel filter is off. Back up we go. Alright, we are under the truck. Right here is the connector that we want to clean off and then disconnect, which I can't get to. So let's get these lines off first. Now these are blue clips. These are extremely fragile. You just pull on the sides. You don't need to take them off completely, but I am, just for visual purposes. Okay, so this is the clip. You just want to pull these outward a little bit to pull it up. This is a lock. So now, this is tough. You want to push on that and then pull it out. So you push on the white part here and pull it out. Turn that down to drain until it's backed up out of your way. Wipe off any mess. Now we'll do the same for the other. Right there. See, I pushed it towards the housing and then pushed the clip in. That'll help you on that. And those are undone. Bucket's still underneath it. This connector, if you can't get to this now, you can get it afterwards, after the housing is unbolted. But I got it at this point in time. So this is just push this. Alright, now we're ready. Let's unbolt this housing. Get this filter housing off. Alright, so I'm on the back side of the frame here. And let's try to get focus here. So what we want to get to is through this hole. and then up through this one. And you just want to loosen these. So what I'm going to use is a 13mm on an extension, feed it through. I think this extension's too long, but that's what we're going to do with a different extension. Don't drop your socket in the frame. Alright, here's our better setup. Small extension, 13mm, excuse me, 13mm. Might be a little too short. Do it. Alright, and the third one. So we got 1, 2, and then the lower third one back there. Alright, now we will grab it, slide it towards the driver's side. I tilt it upside down the drain a little bit, and that's it. Fuel filter housing is off on the bench. This is how far I remove those nuts. You really don't need to take them off that much. You will need to take 2 of them off and swap them over to the new housing bracket. But for now, what we're going to work on is the conductivity probe. And this probe is extremely important because this is what senses the water in your fuel. And it's a specific distance from here down to the bottom of the filter housing because water starts to build up inside there and it stays low. So you really need perfect distance on this conductivity probe, and that's where the machining and the engineering came into play on this whole setup because it's going to sit perfectly correct down on the bottom of this, so that way you're going to start sensing at the correct time whenever you do get water in there. If you get the light that pops up, you just go over here, you just drain this, and you're good to go. Swap it out. I would swap it out. If I'm getting water in my fuel, I'd be swapping this out and picking a different fuel station. Let's go ahead and swap this conductivity probe onto the new housing. Note the connector facing towards the rear. That's how we're going to reinstall. A little bit of persuasion with my mini pry bar. Just going real slowly. Just working it around. And there we go. So that's it right there. That's our assembly. Familiar with this O-ring? Let's go ahead and swap this over. Alright, next steps are to swap out this O-ring and this O-ring. This O-ring can stay on there. So we're going to go ahead and take this off. Alright, so those are off. Now one thing I want to point out, this top of this housing has been dirty and my gloves are now dirty. So every time I touch something, it's going to get dirt on there. So all the dirt's built up in there as well. So what I need to do right now is clean this. But so I'm going to pull away to clean this off real quick. I'm going to use just some basic cleaner on a towel. So let me do that right now. Alright, and we are back. Alright, see, much better cleaned up, right? Okay, so what we want to do is slip on this provided O-ring. Just rolls right on like that. And then we've got this other provided O-ring. You want to drop it. That's always good to drop it first. Wakes it up. Okay. Make sure it's all the way in place down there. So then what you want to do is lubricate it with what it lives in, and what it lives in is diesel fuel. So right at the top of the housing, there's actually some diesel fuel there. So I'm going to lubricate it with that. There we go. Now we're set to install it. Awesome. Guide pin is there just like the factory one. So you really can't mess this up. And I did pull the filter off so that way we can make sure that everything goes in smoothly. I don't want to be fighting the filter or anything like that. So member connector towards the rear, right there, and then we can gently push this down while watching the O-ring. It's a very tight machine to fit, so you want to watch the O-ring so you don't pinch it down in there. I ended up having to put some more on there. Let's make sure the surface is clean inside there, a little bit there. Just help it slide down. Alright, let's try this again. Alright, that is a very tight fit. So what we're going to do, what I'm doing is starting these bolts right here, so that way I know that it's good and straight. Alright, so reading the instructions, we can go ahead and just draw these down slowly, and it'll pull it down. So let me go ahead and do that. Alright, so with them all started, I'm just going to go ahead and slowly walk this around using my 4mm Allen. I wonder if I have a hand one. Alright, so just a heads up, do not rest this on there because you don't want to break that. Alright, so we'll use our 4mm and just go ahead and walk this in. You can see it going in, and looking at it, the O-ring is not pinched or rolled anywhere on there, and that's important. So now we can draw that in tighter. And there it is. Let's get our fuel filters in place. So using the fuel again, going to lubricate the O-ring. This is our water separator. So we're going to go ahead and just slip this on there. Here's our post fuel filter. This one is 3 microns. This one is 13 microns. Alright. Well, there they are. This is just about ready to be installed. I'm going to install the 2 nuts right here that we're going to use. And once on the truck, I will tighten these a little bit more. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and double check that everything is tight. I know they installed it and they installed it correctly, but there's nothing wrong with double checking that everything is perfect. Alright, we tighten those. Those are good. Okay, so we are under the truck with the fuel filter housing assembly here. I just realized in the instructions it said to, well, it didn't say not to, but they haven't installed the fuel filters yet, and it'll probably be a little bit easier to hold without the fuel filters on there. So you can either install them early like I did, or you can do them later. So I'm going to slip this into place. There we go. Now I'm going to go on the back side and tighten those. Alright, so now we just want to connect the electrical connector. Get the fuel line connected again. Hear that positive click. We'll put the lock back in place. This fuel line make sure it clicks, lock, give it a good tug to make sure. There we go, let's tighten everything up and then do our first startup. Alright, we're going to do a good snug on these. It's very tight. Not too tight, obviously. I'm using moderation with this. Ooh, got it all dirty. Alright. Alright, what we want to do now is hop in the truck. Do not hit the brake. Key on. You can hear the power of the pump going. So what's that's doing is sending fuel to our filters. Where are they? Super flow. Key off. Going to give it a minute. Well, not really. We're just going to give it a couple seconds. Let's do a second key cycle. Still don't hear any action. Let's fire this up. Check for leaks. You can hear the pump. Doesn't appear to be any dripping or anything. Looks like we did a good job. Alright, here we are. Got my flashlight under here so we can see a little better. It's a little dark. There it is. You can see where it hangs down right at the frame rail. It's tucked up as high as possible to keep it from having any filters hanging down, being exposed. No leaks, everything's tight and right. Now we've got better filtration.